No Victocrats allowed. Why? Because we've got a country to save. Join me, Larry Elder, tonight starting at 7 on AM 560, The Answer.
We've had some suggestions coming in of who's going to sing the seventh inning stretch tonight. I got a good one. Remember last year during the playoffs, they had on the Jumbotron file footage of Harry Carey singing the seventh inning stretch.
Yeah, that's fine.
That was a big crowd pleaser.
Our friend Ron from Berwyn suggests Joe Mantegna, who's from Cicero, went to Morton East. That'd be a good one. Yeah, Fat Tony, as on The Simpsons. He does the voice of Fat Tony. He's great. All right, by the way, some breaking news, too. New York Times reporting that Raqqa, which, of course, has been the base camp for ISIS in Syria, don't tell Gary Johnson, has been liberated. No longer under ISIS control, according to an American-backed, U.S.-backed militia group there. Now, if that's true, what comes next is a whole different conversation. But it is
apparently
worth noting ISIS is losing its territorial strength.
Yeah, and they took control of the oil fields, which is a huge deal.
So from a man-made disaster in Syria to a natural disaster that compounded some sort of a man-made disaster in Puerto Rico. Yesterday, over the weekend, Jennifer Gonzalez Colon, who is the Puerto Rican delegate to the U.S. House, gave an interview to USA Today in which she described what the federal response has been amid all of the criticism from the left on Trump, trying to make this Trump's Katrina. Here's what she said.
I was very surprised that the president was very aware of the situation of the island, having daily briefings in the situation room. He actually spoke with the governor once or twice a day during the hurricane and after the hurricane. So that kind of conversation never happened before. I mean, this is a new way to have access to resources and communications. I was really grateful that he was listening to the problems. There are things that I will never do, but you know, the president is always out of the script. And I think that's the main difference with people are used to have politicians that are politically correct, that follow the script, and it's not like that. I mean, what you see is what you get, and that's the way he is. I'm not saying that I am comfortable or that I praise all the way he managed the issue, but I will tell you that the president, everything the president said that he was going to send to the island, it's getting there. The resources are there. The help is there. He instructed all his cabinet members to treat Puerto Rico as a state in terms of this hurricane, because we are U.S. citizens. I mean, that kind of instruction is important to have access to all those programs.
Interesting perspective from the Puerto Rican House delegate, and credit to USA Today for actually seeking her out and getting her perspective. For additional perspective on this, we're pleased to be joined by Brian Evans, who's a former Chicago police officer who's just returned from Puerto Rico, where he serving as a contractor. Brian, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
So give us a sense of what you were doing in Puerto Rico and what you saw.
No problem. Just to back up real quick, just for clarification, I wasn't a Chicago police officer. I was at the sheriff's office in another municipality.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Thank you.
4.5 years. No problem. Just to be clear.
Yeah.
So I think you asked what our mission was down there. Is that correct, Dan?
Yeah, the mission, your mission down there, and then kind of how it was able to be executed, or the troubles that you had.
Got it. So I went down, myself and two other law enforcement officers flew down Thursday, September 28th. A day and a half before that, 8 others of our team went down kind of pre-advance to get there on the ground, figure out if we were going to be sleeping in hammocks in the middle of a rainforest or what we were going to do. So they had a little harder because the first 48 hours they slept in a warehouse that was provided by our client, and then we came in and we got very lucky and were able to move to one of, at the time, so we were told, there were only 5 hotels that were even open, and they weren't open to the public. It was purely open to military and law enforcement officers and people doing our type of mission. So we were hired by a private corporation, which I won't mention just to be unprofessional. We don't discuss clients, but they hired us. They have over 30 what I would call retail stores Your listeners would recognize the names instantly of these stores. But they had us there to escort them to do. We had about 3 missions. Escort their local employees on the ground and their local security full-time employees, their security officers, to go to all the different stores and do assessments on safety and security. How badly were the structures damaged? Could they be open? Were they safe to even enter? Were there people that were inside that were looting? Things like that. So kind of initially get to the stores, make sure nobody was inside them, especially inside them and hurt, and make sure that they were either they could become functional in the coming months or years, or they couldn't, and things like that. Then it was to move money from the specific locations, money and assets such as jewelry and things like that. And thirdly, our mission was to help them find employees that they had not had contact with in the island. So we daily traveled. Our 11-man team was split into 3 teams generally every day to go with the on-site locals and full-time employees of this company and go all over the island. We were based out of San Juan, but daily we were in the east, west, all over the island. We were as far west as Arecibo. We were west of Ponce, which is in the southern part of the island, and west of there. I could go on and on about the places we were. So my point is, my perspective comes from that for 17 days while I was there, I landed about 1 a.m. Sunday morning due to all the weather here in Chicagoland, as you're all aware of, on Saturday. But I just have 17 days worth of perspective that butts heads a little bit with what the national media was saying.
Well, Brian, just tell me, are the people they're getting the help that they need? Do you think that the President Trump or the administration has dragged their heels on helping these people? What did you see and what did you hear?
That was not our experience. So when I got there, I think maybe it was exactly a week after the hurricane. Parts of our team were there a couple days earlier. It was very bad. Still, I think as of yesterday, less than 15% of the island has electricity. And the problem with that is the places that do have electricity are being run by temporary generators. And generators are temporary. They're not meant to run for months or years on end. And my concern is what happens with those generators. But the bottom line is, I would say within 48 hours of the hurricane hitting, at the latest, San Juan and the ports there, San Juan is the capital, had almost everything they needed to start immediately distributing rescue items, such as water especially, and food, to the entire island. Our experience was that 100% of the problems there on the ground are a local government official incompetence. It was almost as though, law enforcement in America, we plan and plan and plan and plan for contingencies for when things go very bad, whether it's natural issues such as tornadoes or hurricanes and whatnot, or active shooter, things like that. In Puerto Rico, it's a little different than the United States. They don't have states. There's 78 municipalities. Those municipalities are divided into barrios, and those barrios are divided into sectors. The local government officials, it was as though they had never ever planned for this, and they just didn't know what to do and had no capability to push all of the rescue items that were there out. And I believe, and you may know this better than me, because our communications were very, very limited. Once we got 10 minutes out of San Juan, there was essentially no communications except our satellite phones. But I think it was 2 Saturdays ago that finally the military took over 100% of distribution of relief items, which meant, I can tell you, every hour nonstop, we saw multiple, if not dozens, of helicopters going back and forth across the entire island. They literally, I can tell you from seeing it, would land in a remote area. They wouldn't even shut off the rotors, sit there for 10 minutes maximum, unload their payload to local officials, get up in the air, go back, resupply, and go back out to other areas constantly. It never stopped.
So boy, there's a lot of people I would love to ask, per your firsthand experience and being a professional in this space. Would you like to revise and extend your remarks, Congressman Gutierrez? Would you like to revise and extend your remarks, Mayor of San Juan? I mean, because what you're saying, Brian, is consistent with what the actual, one official down there, well, 2 officials, the governor, Rossello, said essentially the same thing, and Jennifer Gonzalez Colon, who's who we just played a clip from, who's the House delegate from Puerto Rico, has said the same thing. So, yeah, that's a very helpful perspective, because there's been a lot of demagoguery about the response to the damage in Puerto Rico.
And we were not unaware of that being on the ground. Like I said, we were incredibly lucky that when we could come back to our home base or return to base, what we called our forward operating base in San Juan at one of the very few hotels that was open. I literally sat in the morning, had breakfast next to two-star generals. The island has been flooded, as it should be, with more military personnel from every single branch to include Coast Guard. I know for a fact that currently, and I'm sure there are more, there are 100 law enforcement officers there on different contracts with different companies, such as AT&T. I can't get exact, but I'll come pretty close. AT&T has something like around 700 cell towers on the island and are trying to do everything they can as fast as they can to get them up and running. So they have a contract to have law enforcement officers escort their people out on the island. But
was there a lot of looting, Brian? Because you said you had to go into these stores.
Yeah,
there wasn't.
Our client had over, I can't remember, maybe 32 stores across the island. I think 2 that my team were in had happened to be looted. They had done a pretty good job pre-hurricane and boarding and putting sheet metal over windows and trying to protect it from damage and also from the prospect of looters getting in. So I didn't see much of that. I would tell you from a professional point of view, as far as threat levels down there, it's extremely low, if it exists at all. And I'm not trying to brush over the fact that it is an unbelievable tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
Our first couple of days on the ground, I can even tell you if you want about my experience getting off the plane and just walking into the airport, were almost surreal. There is travesty and tragedy there, but I think it's a lot less than is being reported. And just real quick for your listeners, just for perspective again, imagine driving down I-90 to Chicago, and every single billboard you see on those huge, huge metal and sometimes cement posts, the billboard's just gone. The metal post broken like toothpicks in half, laying on the interstate. Then get off one of those interchanges and go into the city of Chicago or in the suburbs, and every single stoplight, if it's even there, is broken, not working. There's no electricity in 95% of the places. So imagine the chaos.
Yeah. Just
literally trying to get around. The traffic was mind-boggling.
He is Brian Evans, former Chicago area sheriff's officer who just returned from Puerto Rico. He does contract work there. Does contract work in this space, security and the like. Brian Evans, thanks so much for joining us and giving us your perspective. Really appreciate it.
Have a great day.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
You're listening to Chicago's Morning Answer with Dave.